All right, welcome back. If you're counting, this is video number 4 um, for Gameplay Week in Digital Game Design. We're actually going to sidestep gameplay just for a brief, the brief duration of this video. I want to fit this topic in somewhere, and I think it's small enough that it fits here. Thinking about functionality and completeness of games. And this kind of connects to gameplay as a whole rather than some of these specific things that we've been talking about so far. The point of this session is to get you thinking about what makes a game functional, and from that point, what conditions or what needs to be satisfied such that your game is not just functional but is actually complete. So that's kind of what we're doing here and now. Before we can even start thinking about what completeness is, we certainly have to say, okay, well, is our game even functional? And take a minute, ask yourself, what does functional mean to you? What makes a game functional? Part of the conditions that have to be satisfied for, at least in my view, functionality. Someone who knows nothing about your game should be able to sit down and play it. That doesn't mean that it's going to be fun. That doesn't mean that it's going to be free of bugs. That doesn't mean that they're going to even be good at the game. They should simply be able to pick up or use your input device and do something within the game space, right? So in this case, what I mean is at this point, when you say, okay, we've achieved functionality, right? The game system is established, right? You've got that working. This can be done in prototypes. These can be paper prototypes if you're really into physical gameplay. They can be digital prototypes if you're using tools like SpriteLib or Unity or Game Maker Studio. But regardless, we want you want your players to be able to control the game or interact in some way, following the rules of the game that you've set out, using the procedures, the controls that you have to work with the game. And to that effect, when they're doing, even this could be like the smallest in-game task, but they won't get stuck doing that thing. This all goes to say, for a game to be functional, or for a part of the game to be functional, the system components for that piece of the game have to interact properly. And so here on the slide it says some resolution is possible, which means that the system should be able to take in some kind of input and produce some kind of output. Maybe the input is I press A, the output is my character jumps. The input could be more broad than that, so the player actually interacting with all of the controls to actually complete a level, and the output would be some kind of like victory for them, right? But in general, let's say this means that players can use the controls and make the game progress in some way, right? Whether it's a physical or digital prototype, it means that some components of that system are interacting properly, and as I said, some resolution can be achieved. Beyond this, deciding if your game is functional is really like a matter of judgment. If your players can, let's say, make it through a session without help from you as the designer, let's say that in that case, the game is functional, right? It works. So yeah, there is some subjectivity here. But if a player can play the game and do something, you've achieved some kind of functionality. Like even here, and I wish I remember where I saw this the first time, but like this kind of like hack job of a phone speaker using a paper towel tube and some cups is like a functional thing. That system works to amplify sound. It's not pretty, but I understand how it works, and I could put a phone in there and use it, right? Your game doesn't have to have final art. It doesn't have to have all the like bells and whistles and cool stuff. But you know, this is maybe gives you an indication of like how bare bones something can be and still be, you know, functional. So there is certainly a gap between when a game is functional and when it is internally complete. And completeness is kind of like the next thing that we're thinking about, right? So oftentimes, as I said, a functional game is not necessarily complete. If you're building an FPS, maybe you would be able to move and shoot within that game, but maybe at that point of functionality, there's no health for the player, or there's no win condition, or there's no this, that, or the other thing. But having something functional that is playable gives you the opportunity to evaluate the effectiveness of the things that are functional. And so this is why like prototyping and testing are important. They'll help you identify issues within what's currently functional, and they'll help you figure out if there are any issues with your game related to how complete it is. Let's say the rules are a little ambiguous, or there's some gray areas. If you test your game with the players and they're not really sure what to do, or what they're allowed to do, or what the game affords them, this will come through that testing that testing phase, and you'll be able to go back and kind of clean those up. Testing, of course, will also help you find rules or scenarios that players will still get stuck at, even though they're very clear within the system or very clear within your design. Maybe they need to be more. There needs to be more signposts or more hints or something in your level design that could help players not get stuck in those places. Sometimes what's missing from a game to be complete is really obvious. Like if there's no win condition, certainly it's not complete. Sometimes it's a lot more difficult to figure out, okay, well, what's actually missing here? And that's where that testing phase kind of comes in. That's how, through working with other players, you can be certain, or you can find areas where your game is still feeling unfinished. And then from that point, your job as designer is to identify what's causing those issues and then resolve them. And to some point, like, the idea of completeness sounds really simple, but it's not. As the larger a game is, there are a lot of systems that are at play within a game, and sometimes those systems interact in strange or unexpected ways, and they're not things that you've designed. They're things that have emerged that are causing problems that maybe you might then need to go and identify which system or which piece of which system is causing that issue. You can also run into loopholes or exploits, places where players can break the sequence of your game where you haven't intended for that to happen, and you can go back and fix those. But when you start identifying these issues that make your game feel incomplete, or when your playtesters are finding problems despite the fact that, you know, some of those rules are not ambiguous at all, always go back and start with the rules for your game. Go back to your design doc, think about, okay, are the rules clear for this scenario? Are the rules clear for this system and how this system interacts? And that's going to help you start on the path to finding out what exactly is causing this problem, or what exactly is causing this strange and weird interaction. And then, of course, cleaning those up brings you closer and closer to completeness, your finished product. Completeness for you, I think, is important, because we think about completeness in Game Dev Workshop and the games that you're building throughout the term or throughout the year. Certainly, and this kind of goes back to some previous classes where it was more of an issue. I think it's been less of an issue with your crew so far. But really what I'm hammering home is that at the end of the year, at the end of the term, I don't want you to just have a functional game. At the end of the term in April, um, it doesn't matter to me if, we have some pieces in here and, I can't really like achieve the goal, but hey, collisions are working. In the scope of like Game Dev Workshop, that wouldn't be enough. And so this is why I put this to you, is to say, okay, well, how do you identify what completeness is for you? And in your case, you need a complete game at the end of the term. So your features that you have designed and included should be working as intended. The game should control smoothly. The game should feel good. Ideally, the game is fun to play, but it's early in your design career, so it's okay to, if it's not like the most amazing thing anyone's ever seen, that's cool because it's a learning experience. But like that's the goal as designers, as developers for you, is to figure out how to make something feel good, make something complete, and make something that's fun or that has the beginnings of fun in there. If you're not making a game through this whole process, what's the point? And just to like hammer home some important points that have come up a lot in the past is, obviously if you're struggling with this and thinking about, okay, well, there's no way that this is going to be complete in time, in this design or in any design that you work on in the future, if you're running up on deadlines, go back to the scope of your game. Think about what features don't really fit or what features are extra, and cut those features out and in favor of polishing or adding proper feedback to the parts of your game that are there and that are relevant and nearing completeness. And this is a hard process. Like, it's in every project, something usually has to get cut. And it really sucks to have that meeting with your team, or even if you're working solo, have that like moment of introspection where say, okay, like I really want this, but we have to draw the line here. And that's how deadlines have worked. And I think like it's helpful for you to access the TAs for all your various classes to make sure that you are capable and that you can meet those deadlines. But I also want to put forth that like it's okay to have those conversations, and it's okay to cut things that don't, or like won't make it. Anyway, I seem to have forgotten to put a thank you slide at the back of this one, so please enjoy this black screen. But thank you for this slight detour into the world of functionality and completeness. I will see you next video or in class.